time to check in with Joseph Lindsley in Kyiv today. Joe, we've been talking about this.
Bob, good afternoon from snowy, cold Kyiv. We have electricity and heat, a good thing to remind the world. Russia's Black Sea Fleet, still it seems to be in a good deal of chaos with no capacity to launch the major nationwide attacks we saw a year ago. On the price of fuel in Ukraine, I can't tell you because I have to calculate into liters and into hryvnia from dollars, so no. I'll have to give that to you later.
Okay.
But there were yesterday Russian jets launched missiles over Kherson region, which is a reminder of just how helpful it would be to have F-16s, American fighter jets, here in Ukraine. Still not here. And meanwhile, today, the Russian foreign minister is sort of astoundingly to many people, is at a major conference in Europe, despite in Macedonia, despite significant protest, a meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. This meeting has been boycotted by Ukraine and by the Baltic states. But even while this war is happening, Sergei Lavrov is. It was a little bit complicated because a lot of countries did not allow him to fly over their airspace, including Bulgaria. But he is there at this meeting, which is a group that was started in 1975 to create, to promote peace in Europe. And we can see today that maybe these institutions are not working the way they intended, and that's something to consider as we look at the news today of the death of Henry Kissinger at age 100. And I knew Kissinger some years ago. We used to go to Yankee games together, and so I've been reflecting on his legacy. And he was born in Germany, was a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany, and in the U.S., of course, he rose to become Secretary of State, National Security Advisor in the administrations of Nixon and Ford. And he was active until really the very end. I mean, just a few months ago, last summer, he was meeting with Xi Jinping in Beijing, at age 100 or 99. And he's also made many comments about Ukraine. And so I've been thinking about his legacy and his philosophy a lot. When I was protege to Roger Ailes, the chairman and founder of Fox News, it was an unusual life. In my early 20s, I didn't have very much freedom. I was editing this newspaper that Ailes and I owned in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. And some days when I finished the newspaper, one of the chauffeurs, and all the chauffeurs were born in Russia, incidentally, and trained in martial arts in case Al-Qaeda wanted to kidnap us. This is the thinking of the people in that world and of Roger Ailes. And the chauffeur would pick me up several days a week in the summertime, and I would go to the Bronx, to Yankee Stadium, where Fox had the box behind home plate. And in the lounge where they had all the nice champagne and food, the likes of Megyn Kelly and Yogi Berra, I met there once, and Geraldo Rivera, all the usual Fox people. But Henry Kissinger was often there. And most of the people did not actually watch the baseball game, but I would sit on the outside part of the box, often with Bill O'Reilly and Henry Kissinger. And I expected, as always with those people, to learn a lot from these meetings. And we didn't. We just talked about baseball. Probably was just a way for him to relax. But as I think about, his legacy, and, a lot of people are praising him, and he certainly, had an influence on world affairs. He was part of the effort in the 1970s when the United States shifted allegiance from Taiwan, which we used to recognize, to Beijing. And even when the people seeking freedom in China in 1989, when there was a Tiananmen Square protest, Kissinger said he understood the Communist Party's crackdown on Tiananmen. And I think, we can sort of see the mentality of those who like to manage affairs and sort of, tell the free people, you can have your freedom to the extent it's bread and circuses, but we're going to manage things for you. And I do think that was very much Kissinger's method. He did say that if he said recently, I think in the past year, if I talked to Putin, I would tell him that he too would be safer if Ukraine was in NATO. And so, he was, as always, he was trying to play both sides on this, because he also said in a story in the Spectator magazine December a year ago that Russia was necessary in the global equilibrium. And this is, I think, what we see, in the Biden administration, among Republicans as well in Washington, this inability to imagine a world without these powerful tyrants, without Xi Jinping, without someone powerful in the Kremlin. And Kissinger was certainly of that school. And perhaps as corroboration of that, today, Putin or someone, whoever's pretending to be Putin, it's always hard to know who's saying what in Russia, but issued a statement in favor of Kissinger and said, for many decades, Kissinger enjoyed a well-deserved reputation around the world. Putin, or whoever was writing the statement from the Kremlin, said a pragmatic approach to foreign policy is inextricably linked with the name of Henry Kissinger. And, I think we have to look at who praises who very much as we try to navigate these affairs. And I think if you look at, Ukraine's revolution of dignity in 2014, there's a reason why we don't hear much about that, except maybe for me and people here in Ukraine. That was where the people took power from the elites. And I often wonder if Ukraine had not given up its nuclear weapons, would they have been allowed to have that revolution by the likes of people like Kissinger? And we even see that when the revolution happened, the United States tried to manage it, tried to contain it. That's why, there was a woman from the State Department, Victoria Nuland, who Russian propaganda and people like Tucker Carlson think that she created the revolution, which is impossible. It was a wide movement of the people. But certainly people like her and people with the thinking and mindset of Kissinger moved in to try to soften, try to contain the freedom that burst forth in that revolution, which they were not able to do. And that's the very reason why Ukraine is at war today.
Israel could use Henry Kissinger today. I wonder what he would make of what's going on with the war against Hamas, Joseph.
Yeah, Bob, I didn't follow that very much. And probably because he was very near the end of his life since Hamas attacked Israel.
Right.
We haven't heard much. But we did, as we think about Kissinger and how, sort of this professional class of the people that manage us, ostensibly to keep the world from burning up on fire. Neville Chamberlain thought he could do the same. But while that happens, you have free people who are not ambiguous and are very clear. And for example, there was a letter released today, an open letter from Ukrainian civil society leaders, including Nobel Prize winner, poets, artists, soldiers. And they wrote a letter to Scholz, the chancellor of Germany. And they said, because Germany has the resources, they have weapons just like the U.S. that they could swiftly get to Ukraine, including the long-range Taurus missiles, and they're not doing that. And so in this letter, which I think the language of it is very much the opposite of sort of the Kissinger-style rhetoric, this group of Ukrainian civil society leaders, they wrote, "What is at stake in Ukraine is not just territory or Ukraine's own future, but the historic trajectory of the world's democracies." And then they said, "Ukraine, at the cost of the epic heroism and the tragic suffering of its people, has become a shield for humanity from the greatest modern threat to world peace, the aggressive and genocidal regime of the Russian Federation." And in this very respectful letter, these Ukrainian leaders, civil society leaders, are asking the Chancellor of Germany to please get these long-range weapons to Ukraine before it's too late.
Joseph Lindsley in Kyiv. And Joe, I hope that you write a book someday, and one chapter has to be watching baseball games with Henry Kissinger.
I am writing that and trying to get it published. So if anyone's listening who can help. And Bob, by the way, I got to give credit where credit's due. The Washington Post yesterday, one of their opinion columnists, Mark Thiessen, published a story finally saying publicly that the U.S. military aid for Ukraine is not what it seems. Most of that money stays in the United States and goes to American businesses and defense contractors. The amount of money for Ukraine is the valuation of the old weapons purchased a long time ago that the U.S. has delivered to Ukraine. So it's a great story, very accurate about the reality of the money spent.
I saw that. Yep. And I was thinking of you when I read it because you've been talking about that for a long time now. And by the way, as a side note here, if you want to know more about Joseph Lindsley's escapades there when he was with Fox News and his escape from it all, find the streaming movie The Loudest Voice. It's still around. That played originally on Showtime, I think. But anyway, it's based on the best-selling book The Loudest Voice by Gabriel Sherman. And our Joseph is portrayed in that movie. Maybe not 100% accuracy there, but you get the gist of it, don't you?
Yeah, don't trust it all. It's Hollywood. And Russell Crowe played my boss. I don't think Kissinger made a cameo in it, unfortunately. But
that's a good movie, though. Russell Crowe was great. All right, Joe, be well. We'll talk to you again soon.
Until tomorrow. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?